Senator Humphries.
Thank you, Mr President, for the chance to support the motion which is before the Senate today. Like others who have spoken in this debate, I'm deeply grateful to have been a member of the Federal Parliament on this day when we take the step of acknowledging the hurt inflicted on so many tens, hundreds of thousands of Australians by virtue of the policies pursued in institutions run throughout this country. I'm glad to have been here to have shared the stories, heard them retold, of so many people who sought, deserved but did not receive the assistance of Australians when they were young and vulnerable. We sometimes sit in this place and we make decisions and we report on things, and the ivory tower concept makes us wonder how what we do here translates onto the streets of Australia. In this particular instance, the work of the Community Affairs Committee didn't need much translation because the people who came to us to tell us their stories translated the reality of what we were talking about beautifully in our minds. I see some of those people here today in the gallery who told me their personal stories, and I'm very grateful for their sharing of deeply intimate details about their lives in order to make real an unimaginable experience in their childhood. I see Patrick. Patrick can't see me, but Patrick, I can see you. Wave to me, Patrick. He can hear me at least. Patrick was a child migrant who came to this country, experienced some dreadful things, but has used his experience to build a difference in his life and in his community. And for so many of the forgotten Australians, so-called remembered Australians now, and former child migrants, this has been the positive pathway they've been able to pursue. We acknowledge today the fact that many did not pursue that pathway because they were too badly affected, too badly hurt by their experience. I want today to be glad for the opportunity to acknowledge the courage and the tenacity and the thirst for justice which was so characteristic of many of the people who came before our committee and who wanted to make a difference, who wanted to support those who had similar experiences to them, who could be forgiven for turning their backs on a society which appeared to have turned its back on them when they needed support, but who have not done that. Mr President, it is true that not all the stories of children in institutional care were wholly tragic. It's true that some children in institutions, on balance, had a positive experience. Some people who looked after them were good people and good carers. But no survey of the evidence can fail to conclude that there were, across too many places and too many institutions and too many individuals, horrific and consistent failures to provide proper care and protection to innocent and vulnerable people. In some institutions there was a culture which could only be described as evil. And it is that quality of the failure to nurture and to care and to respect and to love those children in those institutions that has to be atoned for today, not only because it inflicted such damage on those children, damage which, as has been said, has had repercussions throughout generations, but because it is a powerful reminder to us all in this Parliament of why a relentless focus on the best interests of children must be at the centre of all social policy that we discuss, we debate, we consider and we support. To do anything less, Mr President, would be to betray the experience, the sad experience of so many people who passed through institutional care in the 20th century. I want to use my short time to acknowledge also that for many of these people, the experience of being in a home, so-called, was an experience of isolation, of separation. For a child, the idea of being locked away somewhere is very much creates a sense of punishment, of having done something wrong. of having been locked away for a reason that was to do with them. And when they were further not believed on telling their stories about what had happened to them, that exacerbated that sense that there was something wrong about them for being in those places. The apology today I see as a chance to say to all of those people that element of blame, that sense of personal wrongdoing is wiped away. It was never there. We acknowledge that it was others' failings that led to them being in those places, that they are more than welcome as full participating members in Australian society, that they are not outsiders, that they are people with a great role to play, and their experience in suffering is an experience that we should build on to make a difference. And I'm confident that with the apology today that will be the case. I have to also say that, as Senator Moore and others have pointed out, Senator Siewert, we have very much unfinished business here. This apology is not the end. Today, sadly, only half of the Australian states have actually set up compensation schemes. I can understand people being cynical about compensation. I'm generally cynical about compensation schemes. But in this case, the argument for financial redress is absolutely overwhelming. What greater loss can there be to a person than the loss of their innocence and their childhood? What could possibly repay people for that loss? The question of redress is one that needs to be tackled directly and immediately by those Australian states which have not yet done so, and for those states which have schemes with problems, they should address those schemes by talking to those people who need them, who rely upon them. I also need to say that there are still shortcomings in the responses of those charities and churches which were responsible for running so many of the institutions we have debated in these reports. They could do much more to strengthen the assistance they provide to their former charges, to extend a hand of assistance that will allow these people to regain that place in Australian society which they crave. Mr. President, I think Senator Moore was right to suggest that we have all been changed by this experience. Not, of course, changed as much as those people who pass through institutions. We have only a dim reflection to behold of what actually happened to them. But we have the power to make a difference in what we do in this place, and that is absolutely what I, and I'm sure the other members of the committee, former and present, will do as a result of their experience on these inquiries. We particularly need to ask ourselves how we can make sure that the 30,000 or so Australians who remain in out-of-home care of one sort or another can be assisted never to experience what those in institutional care experienced. I pay tribute to these people, I thank them for their candour and their courage, and I look forward to working with them in a variety of ways in the future to learn valuable lessons from this experience and build a better future for children.